It's a party.
Here it's mine.
What's looking like it's Nick and I. Unless someone in the big room. Park Meadows. Here we go. Well, let's get this party started. If you're in a spot where you can pull yourself on camera, that'd be sweet. Otherwise, I get to talk to myself. And it's 2 o'clock on a snowy Friday afternoon. So how we all do it? Let's go there. Awesome. So what I've got planned today is going to be interactive. So if you can, jump on in. What we're really going to do is dig into the market statistics a little bit. We did this in Highlands Ranch for team meeting. And I just want to bring everybody kind of up to the surface of what's going on and where we're at. So what are you all experiencing in the market?
Not a lot of inventory. That's one thing I've noticed.
100%. Haley, what do you mean by that? Not a lot of inventory.
Just not a lot of homes on the market right now. Just, yeah, not a lot to choose from for buyers.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is causing that?
Well, I think people are just afraid to make the move because they don't know where they will go if they, do decide to sell. Excuse me.
Yeah. There's that fear, right? Of if I sell my house, where do I go buy the next one? Because there's not a lot of inventory.
Right.
Anybody else want to dive in on that conversation? So I'm going to show you a tool that I watch and my team watches on a regular basis. I'm going to share the screen so y'all can see it. And this comes from RE Colorado. So what happens when you pull the stat, if you go into RE Colorado, you log in, you go to Matrix, and this will be your front page. So over here in the center, you can see that it'll pull up your statistics. Usually it'll either go to 24 hours or it'll default to 3 days. What I like to do is look at the 7-day average, and it keeps us focused on what's going on. So when you look at the last 7 days, going back to what you're talking about, Haley, we've had 918 new listings. That's it. And for those who have been watching the market, how many homes do we typically sell a week in Denver? if you look at pendings, that'll give me an idea, and even that's low. Right now, in the last 7 days, we've put 1,227 homes under contract. We've sold over 1,000. So historically, we've averaged between 1,600 and 1,800 homes a week that are sold and pended. So if you go that direction, you look at 918 properties right now that hit the market this last 7 days. What's the story that it tells us? By the way, this is for everybody to jump in. So what's the story you see? What does it tell us?
There's not nearly enough homes.
Yeah, there's not nearly enough homes. Here's the fun part. And Haley, you were talking about this. We got multiple offers on stuff. People are worried about where they're going to go next. If we had twice as much inventory, would we sell twice as many homes in the same amount of time? So let's say we had 1,800 homes come on the market. Would we put 1,800 homes under contract based on how many buyers we have currently in the market? And the short answer is yes. So it's not the fact that we don't have enough buyers, it's the fact that we don't have enough homes to list. And the reason why this is important, there's two things. I don't know if y'all have heard the question of when's the market going to crash? Are we still in this bubble? And let's use the statistics to kind of walk us through this, because when people ask, okay, are we in a bubble? Are we going to see the market crash? Here's the truth. If we continue to see this lack of balance, meaning we're only having 800 to 1,000 homes come on the market over the course of a week, and we typically see 1,600, 1,500 homes go under contract a week, we have an imbalance of supply and demand. So think about it this way. When there is less supply and more demand, what happens to prices? They go up. When we have more supply than there is demand, that's where we start to see prices go down. Really what we want to watch for is, okay, at what point do we get to an equilibrium? At what point do we start to see 1,600, 2,000, 2,200 homes come on the market so that we can start to work through the demand that currently exists? Here's the fun part, is that's where we'll start to see the pendulum come back to an equilibrium. Here's the piece to remember. It doesn't sit there for very long. It swings. So you're going to see it swing from one side to the next. The key is to watch those numbers. So as you start to see them swing, it doesn't mean we're going to have a market crash. It doesn't mean we're going to see properties lose a ton of value unless it swings too far to the other side. And yet what it does mean is we're going to start to see an equilibrium. I've been watching even my own properties, and we're seeing a 1.8 to 2% increase in equity every month. Every month. So when people are worried about buying today, here's the truth. Had they waited last year, let's say we were going to buy a $500,000 house last year, we saw an increase of about 18%. What's that house worth today? Do the math, it's 590,000. So those folks who chose to wait because they're worried about the market just lost out on a potential 90 grand. And if they wait a second year and we see another 15, 20, even 10% appreciation, now that house is worth 650 that they bought for 500. And 2 years later, they could sell that for $150,000 profit, tax-free, because they lived there for 2 years. And if the average income is $75,000 to $80,000 in Denver per person, they would have made twice as much of their income just in equity gains over 2 years had they purchased at the right time. Here's the flip side. If we see the market start to swing to the other end and we start to see appreciation slow down to 3 to 6%, which is on average where it has been historically, if they plan on living in that house for 5 to 7 years, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And now that we're starting to see interest rates creep up, the cost of homes, of the mortgage payments going up because of interest rates, it's still not slowing down the market. It's still not cooling off because we still don't have enough supply. We don't have enough supply to carry to meet the demand. So let's pause for a second. Is it making sense? And what questions do you have?
How do we position ourselves to take advantage, especially knowing that there's just not enough listings?
And that's the question, right, Nick? So who wants to jump in? I've got my opinions, obviously. And what do y'all think? So I'm going to draw because I like to draw, and it probably won't be very pretty, and that's okay. So play along with me. There's this really cool little thing, and you can find this in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. It's usually right at the very beginning, and it's a triangle. And I'll find a page for you so you see it and get it. It is the foundational triangle that we use. I'm going through the book to find the easiest one. So you can see it, there's several parts to it. And yet really what we're looking at is if you look at the triangle, on page 119, it'll give you an example. Let's just focus on what's on the outside of this little triangle that's really pretty. It's 3 L's, right? So you got this L, you've got an L on this side and an L on this side. It's what we call leads, listings, and leverage. When you look at the book on page 119, there's several parts in the middle about, how do you become that millionaire real estate agent? We'll touch on that in just a second. And yet here's the key. When you look at leads, listings, and leverage, successful agents, successful teams who create consistency in their business go out and get leads. The question is what kind of leads? Because we can go find leads all over the place. The question is what kind of leads, and what we focus on is listing leads. So the top agents go out and they look for listing leads specifically. Here's the reality. You shake a tree hard enough, buyers are going to show up. It just happens naturally. The talent comes and the skill set comes when you develop that skill set and that talent, the systems and models around it to go get listings, to create leads, a lead flow that creates listing leads, not just buyer leads. And that's what the third L is. When you look at it, this third L is leverage. So you've got leads at the base, listings on the right, leverage on the left, or left and right, however you're looking at the screen. So let's pause for 12 seconds, because here's the question I ask is, how do we leverage? Because leverage, sometimes we think about people. The reality of it is leverage is 3 simple things: systems, models, and tools. So when you look at leverage as systems, models, and tools, people, you can get a transaction coordinator, you can get those types of things. And yes, that's where people come in. And yet really what it comes down to is systems, models, and tools. So how do we leverage, how do we create systems, models, and tools around our current listings to earn more listings? And that's the question that top agents will ask, is how do I leverage my listings to earn more listings? How do I leverage my listings to create more listing leads so I can earn more listings? And it's just a cycle. And the reason is because we understand that if we create more listing leads, naturally buyers are going to show up. And there's several ways to do that, right? It's maximizing the opportunity when you do have that listing through, be it an open house system, through a marketing system, through having the conversations with the neighbors in the neighborhood, going to the move up neighborhoods, all those fun things. So a simple system. It's called the 7-level open house. If we're in a situation where we can do that, the client feels comfortable, game on. If not, there's other ways to work this without doing the open house. So let's take out the open house first. You earn a listing. Let's say it's 500, 600, 700,000. You call through the neighborhood, you knock those doors, and you let them know that the listing's coming up. So instead of putting it on right away, you put it on, you give it a week, right? You get your photos, you get everything squared away, and then you put it on the next week. The week between is your coming soon week. So this is where you're knocking the doors in the neighborhood. This is where you're calling through the neighborhood. Follow the TCPA. Your brokers will tell you what that is. Jake does his best to make sure I follow the rules. And yet follow the TCPA when you do it. And this is being recorded, so I'm covered. And yet what you want to do is reach out to the neighbors. Have the conversation, say this house is coming on the market, it's going to be there this Saturday. If you're doing an open house, invite them to the open house, have a half hour ahead of time that the neighbors are invited to. And then as it goes under contract, you reach out to those same neighbors, let them know, hey, it went under contract. Sometimes that script is simple. It's, hey, we got 8 offers on this house and we could only accept 1. So that means there's 7 other folks who'd like to live in the neighborhood. So who do you know that may be interested in selling, because we have 7 other interested buyers for your neighborhood. And it's just that conversation. If they say, I don't know anybody, then you get to say, well, would you be interested if you could sell at the right price? They may say yes, they may say no, they may say, what's the right price? And you get to say, you tell me, what would be a price that you'd be interested in selling at? They may give you a price that you can accomplish. As it sells, now you get to call them up and say, hey, congratulations, it sold for this price. And you get to start to disclose those pieces. Step number 2. By the way, that's door hangers, that's door knocks, talks directly to people. A lot of times people cheat the system. They just put a note in the door saying, hey, come see me. Talk to people. That's how we get business. The next piece is go to the move up neighborhoods. Like in our world in Highlands Ranch and in Lone Tree, you'll have that neighborhood that's 700,000-800,000. And if you go across the street, you're going to find that neighborhood that's 400,000 to 500,000. So you go to the $400,000 to $500,000 neighborhood, let them know that this one's coming on, because they may sell their house in order to move up, which gets you another listing. Here's the key to listings in our market. The best way for us to control our paycheck today is to own the listings. Because we all know if we put a listing on the market, it's priced right and it looks great, it will sell. Even if it looks like crap, if it's priced right, it will sell. Let's be real. So it's about controlling the listing inventory that guarantees the paycheck. Unfortunately, when we have the buyers, we've all gone through this, especially my team, we coach them through it as well. You're one of 8 or 10 or 12 offers, and now you're hoping that they pick you. And the key to that happening is having a conversation with the listing agent, finding out what's important to the seller and writing the offer in a way that meets those requirements and what it is they're looking at. It may not always be price. It may be that they want specific terms in the contract. It may be that they need to move quick. It may be that they need a 60-day lease back. You find out what's important and write the contract accordingly. And then you work from there. So what are your takeaways? What are your ahas? I can go on forever about this concept and these topics. And yet, you know, the question is, how do we leverage our listings to earn more listings?
I liked what you said about, after the sale, still going back and door knocking in the neighbors and saying, hey, we just had 8 offers. And so more people want to be in here. I never thought to really door knock after the fact or, reach out. I think that's a great idea.
It's fun. Well, and here's the script my team uses. If they're calling or knocking, it's, hey, just want to say congratulations. And they go, what for? Well, we sold this house across the way for $22,000 more than the last sale. And you just picked up an extra 22 grand.
Yeah.
And they kind of stop and go, okay, that's cool or whatever. And then the fun question we ask is, what would you do if you had an extra $22,000 today? And they may say remodel the kitchen. They may say this or that. The reality of it is our job is to connect them with the service that they are looking for, that we could provide to help them get there. They may go, holy cow, if I get an extra 22 grand, I might sell today and buy the house across the street. Off we go. You never know unless you have a conversation. This just goes back to being proactive versus reactive. How do we control the market versus hope it comes to us? Thanks, Haley. What else?
I do think one thing that's interesting just from a brokerage perspective is I've been dealing with a lot of buyers lately. And when I first started, I remember getting the advice of calling and seeing what's important to the sellers so you can tailor it. And I've done that. And I was getting really frustrated because I've been doing that. And I've run into a couple of agents who have literally just been like an offer and hung up on me. And like, they don't want to push, which besides being rude, but like that makes me feel good hearing it in this way that my competition isn't going for the next listing. And is there a good way that maybe I could safely piggyback off their listings, knowing that they're not taking care of the neighbors, and I could kind of use their listing to get the neighbor's listing? Is there a good, am I saying that right? Is there a good way to handle that?
So this is what my team does, and it always causes a little bit of controversy, especially in today's market. When we sell the home, when we bring the buyer, we ask the buyer if we can put a sign in the yard. And the sign says, my home team just sold another one. And because it's a fresh sign, it's a new sign, it catches people's attention and it drives people back. Well, the other agent usually gets upset. The reality of it is that other agent no longer represents the client that's in the home. And we got our client's permission to do so. So it's just, again, it's the perception that we create as we go through that process. The second hand is if they haven't gone back through, then you get to say, hey, I'd love to meet my new client. Here's some information about them if they're willing to give it to you. By the way, we help them buy this house. Do anybody else who'd like to, because we got other clients and other folks who may be interested in the neighborhood as well. They're one of several offers. You go through that same conversation. And all of that, you have to get permission from the client. The other thing that we've done is done an open house party where we go around the neighborhood, invite them to come meet their new neighbor. We cover some of that expense, and yet we bring in the neighbors to have those conversations as well. So margarita machines go a long way.
That sounds fun. I want one of those. And I guess just one more level, Jake, is as someone who doesn't have a ton of business, like I've only had like 1 or 2 buyers in the last couple of months. Is there a way to do what you're describing if you don't have the buyer? Like if I'm trying to get a foothold in my neighborhood and there's 2 other realtors here and nobody really owns it, but like, you know, he's had 1 listing and she's had 2 listings in the last 6 months. Is there a way I could kind of do something similar with theirs? Like, hey, you know, these sold 6 months ago from Jeff and other team.
I want to say 10 or 12 agents in our neighborhood. A couple of them actually office out of our offices. And what they do really well is it doesn't matter if it's their listing or somebody else's, they have to notate it if they didn't list it. And yet they go through the neighborhood, have a conversation, knock on the doors and say, hey, these are the 3 homes or the 5 homes that sold last quarter. Here's what they were listed for. Here's what they sold for. Here's the model. Here's the square footage. And a lot of folks will just mail it. What they do that's successful is they knock. They go knock on the doors, have the conversations, you know, really create those relationships versus just be somebody else who's throwing a bunch of mailers out. The other thing, if you don't have a lot of listings, or if you've never taken listings, or you may not have any inventory at the moment, because we have a whole 800 that came on, is there are folks in the market center that do. So talk to the leadership, talk to the agents in the market center that do have those listings. And most of the time, unless they're actually working it the same way I just said, they're more than happy to allow you to go out, do the open house, follow the system, follow this model, and make it work. And then it's, hey, my team has this listing that we just took. So it's not another agent in my office, it's my team, because we're all a team. So
that makes sense.
Pieces. Go ahead.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. What else? What other questions do you have? This is your time. I can spew all sorts of fun stuff. So I will tell you this. Here's another secret. If you don't have listings, Brendan Bartik has a group of his folks in our office in Highland Ranch. And one of his agents stood up in our team meeting this week, and she said what they're doing, because listings are so short, is they're actually reaching out to for sale by owners. And instead of calling a for sale by owner and saying, hey, you want me to list your house? What they're saying is, I would love to hold your house open for free to help get more traffic through the door. And then they're following the same model with that for sale by owner to create more business, to build their database and have that same conversation with others. Now, before they do, they have an agreement signed, which we have in the market centers. It basically says if they bring the buyer or find the buyer through that process, that the for sale by owner agrees to pay a buyer's agent compensation of X, Y, or Z. So that's already put in place ahead of time. And yet they'll hold that house open. They'll get more deals. They'll get more opportunities because they're doing the same. They're following that same process. So it doesn't always have to be yours. It doesn't always have to be somebody in the neighbor or in the market center. It could simply be just for sale by owner. And it's a different way to bring value to the for sale by owner than saying, hey, how long have you been on the market? How many agents have come through versus how many people? You don't go down that line of questioning. Well, that's why you need to hire me. Blah, blah, blah. They get that call all the time. So another outside way that we picked up this week, a nice little reminder. What else?
That can't be in the MLS, right, Jake? That would be like you going around and inviting everyone.
Yeah, so typically there's ways to pull those for sale by owners through other resources. Talk to your brokers because they'll be able to tell you which ones are best and comply. I usually get in trouble with Donna and Debbie when I tell you where to go for it. So,
Well, and I more meant if you're if you're holding them an open house, you can't put the open house in the MLS, right? Because it's not in the MLS.
I would say that's a question for Debbie and Donna.
Okay.
I'll be able to tell you. I think if the seller is authorized it, you can. However, there's a myriad of other ways to advertise it, be it through social media, through the neighborhood, obviously put out 1 million signs, all those types of things. Yeah, she was saying, I think this weekend she's got a $2.3 million for sale by owner that she's going to hold open. All it took was a phone call. What else?
It seems pretty cut and dry to me, Jake. If I got people that are waiting and wanting to wait, the bottom line is the longer they're waiting, the less equity they're going to get, the less they're going to get for their house, and the more they're going to pay for the other one. Correct?
It's the magic. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it comes back to people are like, well, when's it going to crash? Well, let's look at the statistics, right? And sometimes that's putting it into a spot where they can understand. You know, and that could be as simple as like, I just bought a car for my kiddo. And it could be a conversation of, have you looked to buy a car in the last couple of years? And they may have, they may have not. If they haven't, well, have you filled your car up with gas in the last couple of years? So what happened from 2 years ago to today? How much has gas increased? You know, and it's because, again, there's a shortage of the supply and an increase in demand as we start coming back out and, you know, come away from the houses, which causes that price to rise. Same thing happens with homes. If you go down the car route, you know, how many of you tried to buy a new car lately? You know, I just bought a car for my son and went to the dealership, worked with a buddy of mine who is the sales manager. He handed me off to this great sales agent, and she said, you know, I feel like a used car salesman right now because we don't have any new cars on the lot. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went and bought a used car for my son and paid more for my son's used car than I did for my daughter's new car 4 years ago. Because supply and demand, right? So sometimes it's taking them outside of real estate, putting those pieces together. So when we come back to real estate, you can say, look, we have the same challenge. We had 800 homes come on the market in the last week. We had 1,100 go under contract. Currently, we only have 2,200 homes on the market, which means at this pace, if we didn't have another house come on the market, we won't have a house to sell in a week and a half. So naturally, what's going to happen if that's the case? And here's where it gets funny. I'll get calls from realtors and they're like, dude, this house has been on the market 2.5 weeks. What's wrong? And I'm like, man, when I got into real estate, if it was on for 6 months or less, you were lucky. Because there's 1,000 million homes and only a handful of buyers, and they wanted to see 82 before they made a decision. And the conversation was, well, let's wait a week and see what else comes on. So it's fun because you get both sides of that. And the key to understanding what's going on is to watch that pendulum and just look at the last 7 days and keep looking at the last 7 days. It'll give you a really good idea of what's going on. So I look at it every Monday because a lot of the listings come on over the weekend, and every Monday it'll tell me where we're at. Maybe Tuesday it'll tell me how many went under contract. and yet you're still going to see that variance. And here's another thing to watch: price increases. How many price increases happened? And when you look at price increases this week, we had 83 properties expire, meaning they didn't sell. And we had 157 that actually went up in price. And only 129 came back on the market. So if we're seeing more increases in prices than we're seeing expireds. Now here's the fun part: what type of property typically increases in price?
New
Single
build.
family?
Yeah, new construction, right? So typically what we're seeing in increase in price is new construction, which is also going to be what leads the market. So if they're continuing to increase in price, if we start to see those decrease in price or level out, it tells us that we're starting to see a level. The market's starting to level out. Right now, I was talking to John Eno in our Highlands Ranch office. He just started to build a new home, and they opened up 8 lots and bid the lots off. We're talking like 8,000 to 9,000 square foot lots that they held an open for just for the dirt before they started to build. Where in the past, that 8,000 square foot cruddy lot would be free unless it backed to open space or it was in some fancy cul-de-sac. Not anymore. So that's where we're starting to see those price increases as well. It's because the dirt itself is what they're selling off. All right, so what are you taking away? What are your ahas from today?
Just get after it.
Right,
Come on, we can do
just get
it.
after it. What else?
I mean, I think the idea that the listing is the first step one, not step, the step before the paycheck and you're done. The listing needs to be treated as step one in the marketing to get to the next listing, which is step 10.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and all too often we go, hey, I got a listing, I'm going to get a paycheck. We celebrate, we put it on the market, game over. And really, it's how do we become purposeful? How do we use that as a tool, as leverage to create a system around it to go get more?
man, I did that. I got paid in November, and then my wife wants like another paycheck. It's ridiculous.
That's what happens when you have kids, Nick. What else?
Can I ask a COVID question?
All day.
Because I got, the couple I have is very wanting to buy sell, but they have a 1-year-old baby and they are just freakish. And so I'm just trying to figure out the best way to smooth all that over. Is there any way?
And where I would go is I would ask them, hey, so what would help you feel comfortable? Because we can put those protocols in place and they're acceptable based on today's market. So what would need to happen so you feel comfortable? And that could be, go for a run, go to a movie. Here's a lunch and a movie kind of gift card. We'll run 1 million people through the house while you're out. And before you come back, we'll sanitize the whole thing. And knowing how our market operates, if it's priced right, they're going to get offers over that weekend. And now they're just working with one buyer to be able to go through that process with inspection and all that fun stuff.
And so I totally see that. I mean, absolutely. This is a townhome in Centennial for $400,000. This is a done deal as soon as we get her done.
Yeah. Well, and then the other question that they may have on the backside is when we go look at houses, how do we insure? Yeah. Right. And that goes back to same conversation. I run through airports and there's hand sanitizer stations every 12 paces. It smells like everybody's drunk because there's so much alcohol in the air. And what do you do? And that, same conversation. How do we help you feel comfortable? Is that gloves? Is that hand sanitizer? Is that booties? Is that masks? What will help you feel the most comfortable as we're out looking at property as well. And even in the house, I mean, they can have those same requirements that they put on booties, that they wear masks, that, that's their private property. So they can set those expectations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that just comes down to asking questions, right? and understanding what's important to them. All too often we just assume. Like the question I would ask y'all, we all have goals for this year, correct? 2022. So what needs to happen by the end of March? Where do you need to be to know and feel comfortable and confident that you're on pace to achieve your goal? Same type of question, just in a little different spin. And now it gives you a different focus. Any other questions? Anything else?
Any great ideas for 1031s and all that? I need to talk to some people because I have a bunch of houses that I own outright that I need to use that money and buy more houses. And so I need to talk to someone.
Okay, so here's a couple things. And this comes from somebody who just did this over the summer.
Okay.
We did a $2.3 million 1031 exchange. There's not that much inventory. Let's just be real. So we bought a handful of properties in Pueblo is where we went. We bought an eightplex, I think 4 duplexes that all cash flowed great. And we still had about $300,000, $400,000 that we had to do something with. Otherwise we're going to have to pay the government, which I don't like to do. So we had a backup plan, and it's called the Delaware Statutory Trust. So what a Delaware Statutory Trust is it's not necessarily someplace where you're going to put your money and get rich. It's a place where you protect it. So you may pick up 3 to 5% in appreciation every year. The difference is it pays out a dividend. So we put about 400 grand into a Delaware Statutory Trust, so we didn't have to pay taxes on it. It pays out a 4.5% dividend. So every month we're picking up about $1,500 to $1,700 a month that just shows up. And so far it's appreciated about 5% over the first 6 months. So as they sell that property, you get to 1031 that exchange that property either into other property inside the Delaware Statutory Trust, or you can pull your cash out and 1031 exchange it into another property that you want to buy. And it's just a place to put your money. We've done this with a lot of our sunsetting investors, that have 7 to 12 homes that, because of the moratoriums and some other pieces, kind of got in trouble. They've got a ton of equity. So we basically just sold their homes, put them into something that's passive, much more passive, that just pays them a check. So that's kind of how it works. I may have given a plan to my oldest son that says, if dad ever gets hit by a bus, this is what you do with all of our investment properties, so mom never has to work again. Just don't tell mom, because she might throw me in front of the bus. And yet there's other outside structures that most people don't know and aren't aware of that help out. So if you need a contact for that, Leslie, just reach out, because they do have to be certified financial planners to have access to that. And the guy that I use charges a flat fee, where most of them will charge 6%.
Does Jerome have all that info? Because I'm meeting with him next week.
Yes and yes.
Thank you.
So, and because it's real estate, you tax defer your 1031 exchange, and like the one we're in is 122% tax deferred, I think, over the next 3 years, which means we're actually getting more tax benefit than what we put into it. That's the joys of having a father that's a CPA. I just listen. So yeah, Dad can tell you more about it when you meet with him, Leslie.
I will. I'm excited. Good.
So it's a great option for your investors that aren't sure what they're going to do with the cash and don't want to pay a bunch of taxes. Awesome. Any other questions? You got me here. Could be about what we talked about. It could be about investing. You name it. Mark Secco. Awesome. Was today good? Did you get a lot out of it? Now we're talking.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, go have fun, play in the snow, make a snowman, and enjoy. Keep rocking.
Thanks, Jake.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
See y'all.
Thanks so much, Jake. Sorry I
Always.
monopolized a bit, but I appreciate this. I learned a lot.
There's only 6 of us, Nick. We get to monopolize. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
Leslie, I
good.
love Grogu in the back. That's a great background.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
There it is.
He's so cute.
Right
I
next
gotta
to
print-
my real estate investor.
There you go.
I got my MREA. I gotta get on yours and Jake's level with maybe print out my bold certificate to go back there too, because I see your award and
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Get
man.
your crap up here. Get
Here's
your crap
mine.
up here and look good. There we go.
That's right.
All right.
Mine's all tabbed and all the other fun stuff. So
hey, thanks so much,
you're
guys.
welcome.
Bye-bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye, Jake. Bye, Leslie.
Weekend.